In this video, we're going over example number 3 in lesson 8.2. And 8.2 is all about the rate of change. Okay, remember the rate of change is the same thing as the slope. So, example number 3 says a supervisor took several minutes to count the number of items at the end of an assembly line. The table shows the number of items at the end of each minute. Okay, so here we have our table, right? Because the last part of our objective is to determine the rate of change when given a table of values. So here we have our table. All right, here it's time and number of items, right, on the assembly line production. And first we want to think about the way that you find the rate of change when you're given a table, okay? And the way that you do that, if you remember how to find the slope of a table of values, right? The rate of change is the change in output. So write this down. This is like the formula. It's the change in output over the change in input, okay, which we've kind of seen before. The rate of change is the change in output over the change in input. Okay, so now we have to think about, well, what is my output units and my input units? All right, remember we talked about this when you try to figure out what the input and the output is? The input is like the cause and the output is like the effect. Because time passes, the effect is that the number of items on the assembly line changes. So the input here is time and the output is the number of items at the end of the assembly line. All right, so the here we have, so the rate of change is the change in output, so it's the change in the number of items over the change in time. That's your rate of change. Okay. So, let's see here. Hold on. Let me make sure. All right. So here we have letter A asks you, what is the rate of change of the number of items between minute 3 and minute 5? Okay, well, let's see. This is important. They're asking what's the rate of change between minute 3 and minute 5. All right, so what we have to do, remember what we used to do when we found the rate of change before? We would check the change in input. We'd go up each time in minutes and then up the table with the number of items, like the change in output. This time, since they're only specifically asking between minute 3 and minute 5, we need to find the change between minute 3 and 5. So you put your swoop line between 3 and 5. And then over here, the corresponding change in output. All right. So the change in input here between 3 and 5 is you're adding 2. Okay. You're adding on 2 minutes. The change in the number of items, all right, if we don't know the top on the top of our head, off the top of our head, not on the top of our head, if we don't know off the top of our head the difference or the change from 32 to 44, change is like finding the difference, right, or the subtraction. So you could do 44 minus 32, right, to find the change, how you go from 32 to 44. All right, let's subtract 2. 4 minus 2 is 2. 4 minus 3 is 1. So the change here is we're adding 12, number of items. Okay. So let's write down our rate of change then. So the rate of change right? If the definition is the change in output of a change in input, and we said that the output is the number of items, which is 12, and the input is time, which is 2 minutes, then what we do is there were 12, the change in output is 12, and the change in input is positive 2. So that equals 12 over 2 equals 6, which means that the rate of change of the number of items between minute 3 and minute 5 is 6. Okay. All right. So now we want to think about, well, what does the rate of change mean in this situation, right? So the rate of change is comparing two different things, the change in number of items and the change in time. All right. So the rate of change in this, what it means is that there are 6 more items at the end of the assembly line each minute. Okay? Because we want to look, when we're trying to figure out what the rate of change means in this situation, you have to look at the units here. And we're talking about the number of items at the end of the assembly line and after a certain amount of minutes. So the rate of change is 6, which means there's six more items at the end of the assembly line each minute. Okay? So make sure you have all those notes down, and then try the got it before watching the video for the got it.